All right, guys. I am going to be admitting the rest of our guests as they continue to come in, but we're going to go ahead and get started. First of all, thank you everyone for all of your questions and coming and spending some time with us today. So I'm going to kind of give the laydown of how this is going to work, and then Emma, I'll pass it over if you want to say anything about Groom's program, because that's more your hat. Um, if you can keep your microphone muted during the call, that will just help us with distractions and everything like that. We did ask for questions as you guys reserved for this call, so we got a lot. We had like 100 people sign up and hundreds of questions coming in. So we kind of combined them and have general themes that we're going to discuss and talk about throughout the call. If you don't get your questions answered today, we're going to have more calls in the future. And if you have anything that comes up during the call that you want specifically answered, go ahead and pop it in the chat. I will keep an eye on the chat as we go throughout the call. So if I see something that I can add into the conversation as we're going, and if not, we'll touch base when we see how much time we have at the end to get some of those questions answered. So Emma, why don't you just tell us a little bit about the Grooms program and why and how we're here today?
Thank you, Tyler, and thank you everybody for joining us tonight. It was very exciting to see so many people sign up. So myself and Steph are part of the US Eventing Grooms Committee. Our hope with the committee is to support grooms throughout our industry, and make the profession more open and available for grooms and be there for them and answer their questions, which I'm very excited Tyler is on the panel with us because she not only is very qualified in the sports psychology side of it, but she has been a groom herself for a five-star rider. So she knows very well how stressful it can get, but she's also been worked up through from low levels up to high levels. So the idea is that we do these, we're trying to get these meetings going so that basically everyone can have their questions answered. And like Tyler says, there's a lot of questions. We're not going to get to all of them. But hopefully today you will get some answers. And we're very, we always say that everyone that's on the Grooms Committee, you can go on the USEA website and find out who that is. And if you ever see us at shows, we are more than happy to answer any questions. And we will take it from here and see how it goes.
All right. Well, we had a really great question that I thought would be a great way to start out. How did you get to where you are in the sport? So, again, thought it would be a good for each of us to kind of touch base in our background and our history. Steph, you've been quiet over there. Why don't we start with you?
Okay, so I have a little bit. I mean, all of us kind of started out as working students and worked our way up to grooms, different variations of riding, which I think is pretty common. I did not grow up with horses at all. My parents forbid them. So I kind of got into it through family friends, went to the University of Vermont for animal science. And my advisor kind of helped steer me towards coming down to Pennsylvania to be a working student. And that was in 2012. And I've been here ever since and kind of have worked my way up from working student to groom, barn manager, just kind of one step at a time in a couple of different programs. Yeah, so that's a very boiled down version of how I came to be here.
No worries. Emma, what about you with your accent over there? Tell us about your background. How'd you come to
Thanks, Tyler. I've still got it, so that's good.
America?
Yeah, so my story's a little different in that I did grow up around horses, pretty much was in my mother's womb, I think, when she was riding as well. And my dad was a master of foxhounds in England. So I was very, very fortunate, grew up on a farm, but always had horses in my life. And I came over to the States in 98. And I was actually only meant to be over here for a year to see a little bit more of the world and just very very, very fortunate to have landed with a family that took care of me and offered to extend my visas. And that's when I really got into wanting to groom as opposed to ride. Like I was riding, and I probably rode a little bit up until 2002, something like that. But when I started at Phillips in 2005, I knew that I wanted to be going to the top levels, and that needs to be someone on the ground who, for his bun, it was needed to be someone on the ground all the time and not wanting to ride and compete. So I was happy to take the step back from riding and take care of the horses. And it has been I was with Philip for like 16 years. And I was very fortunate to go to a lot of competitions, work with some amazing horses, and I think one of the big things now I'm really realizing is what it has given me in the last 5 years of my life. When I left Phillips, I managed a rehabilitation barn, and now I've created my own business in bodywork, which was something I always wanted to do. But it was a very, very important stepping stone to where I am now in my career. So forever thankful for being a groom. Tyler, what about you?
So I am a little bit like Steph I have an animal science and equine business management degree. And I did my first working student my summers out of college, worked for lower level riders, my first couple years in the industry, which I think was actually really good for me because there's a lot that I thought I knew that I didn't actually know. And then I really wanted to get into grooming. It wasn't Emma, it was Emma's cohort Cat Hill that came to the barn that I was working at to do a world-class grooming clinic. And I was like, oh, you can really make a career out of this. So I packed my things and came to Chester County, Pennsylvania, and was actually a vet tech because I thought my knowledge of veterinary science was not good enough to be a top groom. So I spent about a year and a half doing that before being Jenny Brannigan's head groom. And then while I was grooming for Jenny, I had always had an interest in sport and performance psychology. And I actually already had my master's in sport and performance psychology. So I got my doctorate while I was grooming for Jenny. So everyone that's asking questions about time management, let's talk because I think there are ways to do it. And now I work full time as a mental performance consultant for mostly equestrian riders, helping with performance optimization, coming back from falls, fears, setbacks, etc. So that's kind of my spiel. But like I said, we've got a long list of questions, a lot to get into. Obviously, we wanted to kind of focus today more on barn relationships and burnout and mental health. As we have further panels moving forward, I'm sure we'll address more of the grooming questions that came in. So if you asked a specific like, hey, skin funk or managing legs question, that will be for a further call in the future. So let's start with burnout in general. The lots of different questions about burnout, like do you sleep at all? How do you recognize burnout? What are some ways do you manage and prevent burnout? So I want to just ask you first, how do you recognize burnout in yourself or in your staff? Because I think it's something that's really common in the equestrian world.
I can start with this one. So for myself, it was my sleep pattern mainly. Obviously, being on the road a lot and traveling, I'm someone that needs probably at least 6 hours sleep if I'm going to function well. So when our sleep pattern was majorly off due to long shipping days, or just being at the show for 16 hours a day because you have to start so early, I would get very tired, and then for me, I'd end up like not sleeping. So basically, everything would build up to the point of getting a little emotional, shall we say? So for me, that was where what I could always tell was my tell in my era of grooming. As to how I dealt with it, I think you'll obviously touch on this more, Tyler, but it is the mindset of I was not great at sharing all the responsibilities when I needed to. So when I felt that I was getting tired, I would, have to take a step back and be like, okay, someone else can do this today. Emma doesn't have to do it. And just making sure that I did, if someone had to work, only have a half day a week, making sure that it wasn't always me that just had the half day and, catching up that way. So that was mainly me. Lack of sleep, no good. What about you, Steph?
I mean, I a little bit the same. Like, I think you can recognize within yourself when you're starting to feel burnt out. I think I'm a little,
That's super loud. Please turn it down.
sorry, turn it down.
Wait.
Okay. Um, I don't know. Like, I don't need as much sleep. I would say necessarily, like, I can kind of get 3 or 4 hours of sleep and be okay. So I know that that aspect for me was always, or is, it's still my life, is okay. But I feel like I don't know, especially in the staff, you can kind of see when people are like they're not feeling that motivated. Maybe they're like on their phones all the time or taking forever to do things. And I've found it's super important. And I feel that way sometimes too, where I'm just like, can't get out of my own way, or I just feel slow and uninspired. But I think the biggest thing is to, and I think we'll touch on this later, like try not to make a big deal of that, because I feel like everybody kind of goes through that. Obviously, if it's going on for an extended period of time, that's different. But I think recognizing it, knowing when it's 100 degrees outside, everybody's tired, everybody's hot, like I think accepting that you're going to have days where you feel like that is huge. And once I kind of came to terms with the fact that I am going to feel this way, and then you can just kind of like, okay, today's not the best, but you can kind of move on from that. So I don't know, you have to come to terms with it.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess.
I actually really agree with that. I think acceptance is a big part. And one thing that I wanted to highlight is we are not the only profession that faces burnout. Burnout is actually a diagnosable mental disorder overseas. So it's not currently in the DSM-5 for the United States, but overseas, like you can actually get diagnosed with burnout. I think it's really important to understand that there are different kinds of burnout. So when people are asking questions about like how do you notice burnout in your workers, a lot of times it's the monotony, especially if you're like the groom or you're the head kind of person that's running it, and you've got people underneath of you that aren't getting their days or weeks broken up by going to the horse show or taking horses on trips. I think that can be really, really important. When I was a groom, my working student would go with the lower level horses to the shows, and it was nice because then I got to have a quiet day at home where I was taking care of some of the upper level guys, and she got to address her own burnout by going and exploring. So that was kind of like a really good double way of I was getting a quiet, peaceful day at home, and she was getting to do something different. That monotonous burnout of doing the same thing over and over again, it can almost, to me, be worse than physical burnout. Obviously, physical burnout is very, very serious. And that's one thing that I used to notice in myself. I would actually have physiological symptoms of burnout, doing not only everything that I did in the barn, but also extra stuff outside. I practiced Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so I was at the gym a lot. And I would be trying to do all of these things to prevent burnout in the barn by doing extra, and then my body would show me signs. So I would get like rashes on my face or get sick more often. I really think that in life you can have anything that you want, you just can't have everything that you want. So when we're getting some of these questions about managing burnout or having a life outside of the barn, it does have to be a balance, and there has to be sacrifices, but I don't think that there has to be suffering. So when you feel like you're starting to teeter that edge of suffering, or you're noticing someone suffering, sometimes it's as simple as changing up a task within your current environment that can really help alleviate that burnout. So Emma and Steph, I would also like to get your opinion just on that sort of work-life balance. Obviously, Steph, I know you've got a really unique opinion on this, and I actually really love and appreciate it because I think you just love your job a lot, and that is where you get a lot of fulfillment. For Emma and I know we've always had things outside of the barn that we're doing and pursuing to strike some of that balance. But even just like sleep, personal riding goals, being able to do everything that you're doing and attend to life outside the horses.
Oh man. You're right. Like I don't, I'm probably not normal, we'll just say it, in this aspect, but I do find, I mean, I've said this before, like it is consumed. My job is very consuming, like my time, my energy, but it doesn't consume me. So I don't feel burdened by this. Like, yes, when I'm driving on I-95 at 2 in the morning, you're like, oh God. But saying that, like, it's not something that I dread doing. Like, I've never had a day where I felt like I was at my breaking point or anything like that. And I think part of that is I've recognized, because I do like riding, like I've recognized that riding is important to me. So I've had projects along the way, and both financially and mentally has kind of been good for me because I can kind of build my own personal goals, careers, riding, whatever. But at the same time, like having a little sales project is good as well. And that's really important for me. And that's something that I've noticed. Like I'm not necessarily someone that wants to, or I don't know, I'm kind of shy, I guess. So like going out and doing a bunch of random things at night, like isn't really my style. But I know like having things within our program is important to me. And I think too, like circling back to burnout a little bit, it's also recognizing what you're burnt out from. So obviously when I was a working student, all of us were grouped together, we lived together, we worked together, you're just together all the time, and that's great. I think some of my best friends have been people I've been working students with. um, but that also becomes something that's, I think you can recognize that maybe that's part of your burnout, um, is just being surrounded by the same people all the time. And I mean, I think the longer you're in the industry, the more friends that you have, and you're not kind of stuck in the same group. Even at the horse shows and things like that, you have a lot of friends, and you go to dinner with some friends one night and somebody else the other. And I just think you have to be honest with yourself about what's actually burning you out. Is it the work? Is it the social aspect? Is it lack of social aspect? And for me, I feel like I've tried to be really honest with myself. And in times where I just feel like I am struggling, I have to like narrow it down, like what is actually, weighing on me. So,
Yeah.
which is easier said than done. I understand that for sure.
Yeah, no, and I like that you bring that up because I think, I've had a couple different experiences in the horse world, and one job that I had, there was a lot of times where it was me, right? Like
Right.
I was mowing the fields and I was dragging the arenas and I was taking care of the horses, and maybe there'd be someone popping in, but there was times that it just became me, and the burnout at that position was a lot different than the burnout that I felt working with like a team where there was no less than three other people working in the barn, because you're not going to get as much of that like isolation social like lacking burnout, but then you might get some of the everybody wants to do something, and I feel like I'm being pulled in a lot of different directions. I think it's a really
For
good.
sure. And I think it's hard too. I think, and this is probably with every job, is you have to understand that everybody has their own personality. They have their own reasons for being there. And sometimes that's a balance as well. Some people just want to ride, some people don't. Some people want to go to the Olympics, some people want to do a beginner novice. And I think being realistic about that also helps you kind of like understand where people are coming from and why maybe they are the way that they are, and have a better understanding of the people that you're with. So it's not like, it kind of helps you be well rounded and understand people. So maybe they irritate you less. I don't know. I think it's important to understand why, especially being a leader and having working students underneath you, it's very important to understand what they want out of it and what's important to them. And you can kind of help them along their way and kind of prevent them from feeling like they're just kind of lost in the system a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to circle back a little bit too, as well as someone was Steph, you were making the point, or Tyler, about like changing up the routine and everything. And I I know a lot of us have, as grooms, we talk and it's like, oh, there's a lot of people that, just for as an example, don't want to muck stalls and that. But for me, mucking the stall in the morning was like my quiet time. Like that's what I used to do to I just be in my own head. And so if I had a morning that maybe I could do the mucking and have someone else put horses on the walker for some reason or ice a horse or whatever, then I would like select mucking and just so that I could go and like muck 3 stalls. And I always from the very beginning I always like it was important for me. I always felt looking after horses from the very beginning, like do a good stall, that shows good horsemanship. The very basics. If you do well and efficiently, that you should take pride in how you do the job. So if you complete it well, it would just give me a small satisfaction. But it would also, and it would give me time to think about how I wanted to arrange the day, right? So rather than just throwing myself into tacking up horses and then, calling them out and all that, like I could actually think for myself, I could think through the day. And then touching on, I think you made a critical point, Stephanie, is the communication with your workers on what are their goals.
Yeah.
Are they coming into the program because they want to, most working students are coming in because they want to become better riders. But what is their then goal? Because if they come in with a lofty goal, sometimes I think you do have to be like, okay, so how do we break this goal down so that you can realistically reach a certain standard? And for some people it was like I would have people coming in there like they might be riding, let's say, a 1-star, 2-star, but they couldn't braid to save their lives. And the one goal they had was I want to be able to turn a horse out like you do. So it might be something small like that, or it could be the bigger riding goal. And but supporting them through that is so critical.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Steph.
No, I was just gonna say I totally agree.
Yeah. Okay. Emma, what else did you do in terms of, I know you weren't really pursuing any riding goals, but pursuing personal goals outside of the workplace for yourself?
Yeah, so I I absolutely, yeah, riding goals was not for me. But I actually did ballroom dancing, or I still do ballroom dancing. And it was always something, it is something for me that I wanted to do something that did not contain a horse for 2 hours of my day, at least once a week. And I would, we would go down to Florida for 3 months and I would find a studio in Florida that once a week I got to go dancing. And a lot of that is because number one, I just enjoy dancing. I love music and, it's good exercise. But honestly, it was being able to talk to someone that wasn't involved in horses. A lot of the dancers don't know the head or the tail end. So for me, I could get a lot of things off my chest and they would have no idea what I was on about, but they would listen to me. So that activity for me was very important. And then the other thing, and I'd say this is certainly when I started out grooming, this wasn't it, but now I am very focused on finding time, like I travel, I love to travel. And towards the end of my grooming years, I was like, I might work throughout the year, but if I could save up 2 weeks, and I actually went to Buenos Aires and did a tango dance camp. I went to Cuba and did a salsa dance camp. For me, every 2 years, my goal was to save up so I could do something really big that was very, very meaningful to me. So it was just all about a release and being away from the horse world, because I think we do get suckered in or pulled into it, and all you see is horses, 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 when at the end of the day we are living a luxury life. We are taking care of amazing animals, but there are probably a lot bigger things going out in the world than taking horses to a competition every week.
Yeah, and I'm a bit the same as Emma. I started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu like the same week I started grooming for Jenny, which, like, I don't know why I thought that was a good idea. It was supposed to just be one class, turned into a big part of my life. But I think what helped me achieve that was a quietness of mind and some mindfulness throughout the day. And something that I think is really important to sort of internalize and understand is that hurry is an emotional state. when you're running around and you're hurried, it's because your brain is thinking about all of the things that it needs to do instead of what actually is important right at this moment. And I found that if you balance a day with, well, first things first, the horses need to get taken care of, and then we're going to get through our rides, and then we're going to get through the afternoon chores. It was really easy to be in that very high level program and make it run efficiently, where we could get done at a time that I could make it to the gym, and then Alexa Lapp, who was working for Jenny at the time, could go teach lessons to make money. And we all sort of had our pieces, but there was also this camaraderie around it. I'm working hard so that we're all in a good mood tomorrow. Because when you all get that time to do what you need to do, I think that is really, really important. And hurry, again, like you can do things quickly, but if you do things hurried, you're going to miss them and miss things. And that's not fair to the horses. As soon as you get into the rat race of feeling like you're on fight or flight mode, and again, a lot of just doing the job in general is pushing yourself into fight or flight mode, but finding time to take a breath, finding time to reset and refocus and just kind of take it one step at a time. Again, I think I was really lucky to find myself in that situation. And when I look back and think about sometimes going to the gym twice a day, getting my doctorate and grooming at the 5-star level, I don't even know how I did it. I honestly wouldn't recommend it to very many people, but I would recommend trying to figure out how you can make things work for you. And if you are not able to do things that you value in your life, you are going to feel burnt out. So, step one is usually understanding what those values are and like piecing it together. Right. I think family is really important. Okay, well, maybe you can't take a working student job 6 hours across the country. That's not going to be effective for you. But if family is really important and there's a barn 10 minutes down the road that you can groom at, that becomes a little bit easier. So, kind of just starting to learn to balance those things and play around with it. Steph, I accidentally muted you. I didn't mean to do that. You can just hit
I think Gabby Nicholson just wrote a really good question. Do you
Okay.
see that?
Yeah, let me.
On how to help someone's mindset.
Can you read it
To
out loud for me? Because my chat
No,
is.
because I can't see it.
Oh my gosh. Hang on.
I think she was asking, do you see it?
Yeah, okay.
I think she was asking, how do we install
How,
that
how can you
mindset?
instill a mindset in others that don't have it instead of being hurried, showing them that this task or job is important now, so the balance is broken up between the coworkers. So, I mean, I do think that that takes a lot of communication and it takes a lot of being able to have time that is not rushed and hurried. So when I think about that, my first immediate thought would be, can we have like barn meetings? Can we meet at the whiteboard every day where we're talking about what's getting done and making sure that, hey, if you get this, this, and this done, you don't have to rush. You've got X amount of time, then we're all going to be working together for this greater cause. And just kind of having that balance. I think another thing that's important to note from that side is understanding how people like to be managed. I had one girl that really liked lists, and if you gave her a list, she would do everything really perfectly, but she didn't like me hovering over her shoulder, telling her what the next thing was, what the next thing was, what the next thing was. So I could make lists and I could trust that things were getting done. So I don't, Emma, if and Steph, if you have thoughts on sort of helping everyone slow down and create a better barn environment.
I
Yeah,
think
I mean,
you go.
go on, Steph, you go.
I was just gonna say, I think a lot of it too, and it's less the mindset of being hurried, but it's just being efficient. And I think people have to play to their strengths a little bit. So like if you have somebody that likes to make feed and can do that very efficiently, maybe that's like their thing. If you have someone that can do turnout and like is very detail oriented about like horses coming in and out, maybe they do that. And I think you can kind of like figure out what people are good at and what they like doing. And usually if someone likes doing the tasks, they'll be efficient at them. And I think the key is like delegating tasks, which easier said than done also. But I think you can kind of figure out a system where everyone is doing something that there's always going to be jobs people don't enjoy. But if you can find a way to make people enjoy what they're doing, chances are they will just do it, get it done, and hopefully like move on to the next. Whereas if someone's like, oh, I don't want to do this, or this is stupid, I hate this, like they're not going to be very good at it, one, and two, they're probably going to take forever. So if you can kind of delegate tasks that you think are best suited, and sometimes the fact of the matter is things just have to get done, and if everybody is doing something, then everything will get done, hopefully. Maybe.
Yeah, and adding on to the delegation side a little bit too, Steph, I feel it's important that as a leader, you are also seen doing those tasks that maybe aren't the fun ones.
Yes.
And be willing to step up, and you have to. Like I used to, lead by example was probably one of my favorites. One of the mindsets I had. Like, if you're not willing to do it, why should they have to do it? And then on the other hand, I had a couple of working students that they totally missed being quick with being efficient. And their quickness would actually cause problems with the horses and how they affected the horses. So for working students or anybody that came into the barn had that mindset, being able to be with them and physically show them, like, hey, do you see how you're creating this issue with this horse because of how you're moving around? I had one person that, his main goal was to tack up a horse in 2 minutes, basically. And, a couple of horses would break off cross ties, and I had to take the time and be like, okay, this is the problem we're having, and this is why we're having that problem. And then I would go through the routine and be like, this is a much more effective way of doing it. You're still being efficient, but we're still having a horse that's happy with the situation and not getting anxious because of the way you're moving around. And I think it sort of lends itself to being, you as a person have to be very aware and accountable for your own actions, right? Like, everybody in the barn has to be accountable for their own actions and how they're moving around the horses. And, you might move quicker outside doing the water troughs or whatever, but you shouldn't be running through the barn just to, because you think that's quicker, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the go slow to go fast mentality, I think, is really important. And, I'm like transported back to being a working student and having plans after work. And I was doing turnouts, and we had one field that had like the little tiny gate, right? The little gate. And whenever we would bring the horses in the morning, I would just open the gate and they would come into the second field that was closer to walk to. So my little 17-year-old working student brain said, well, I can turn them out this way too, right? I don't have to walk all the way to the little gate. I'll just go to this field and put the horses in. And of course, none of the horses went through the little tiny gate to go in. And they were like, oh, that's my field. I'll go over there. And so they're galloping around me as I'm trying to catch them and get them into their actual field. And I think my boss did a really great job. She was like, Tyler, like, what did you learn? Oh, I tried to cut a corner and I ended up sitting here crying in the field because I couldn't catch any of the horses. And so, unfortunately, this is an industry where some of the life lessons are learned on the job. But as we're kind of talking down this theme, we had another question come up about how to remain supportive with someone who is new, but not necessarily up to snuff. I, again, looking back to that first working student job that I had, I was like, oh my God, like, I don't even know how the horses were okay, because I just feel like I didn't know so much, but you do learn by being there. And if someone had written me off as, she's just not going to get it, she's slow, her braids are awful, and she's not cleaning water troughs as well as they should, then I never would have gotten to groom at a 5-star. So especially Emma and Steph, in those high busy barns, how do you help someone that doesn't know what to do? develop into a groom?
I think for sure there has to be like a grace period, kind of, a month, 2 weeks, whatever. And I always tell people when they come in, I am like, the first month is going to be horrible. You don't know who the horse, and it's like that for any job, I think. But like, you don't know the horses, you don't know where they go, you don't know what they eat, you don't know the system, and like until you get that down, it's going to feel like you just have no idea. And again, we have a big program, so it's kind of, and I know this, I know it's really like overwhelming. So I try not to be too critical in the first 2 weeks. I give them tasks that are hard to mess up, if that makes sense. Like, okay, this horse is going right here, or like this horse is going here, or this horse can get tacked up and was exactly this. And slowly you can kind of build those things. If they're tacking up the same 3 or 4 horses every day, eventually they start to know what they wear, they know where they go, they know, like where their stalls are, where their turnouts are. And I think you can kind of slowly build. And again, this is, if you only had a handful of horses, this would all happen very quickly. And the other thing too, like Tyler said, when you think back to your first working student job or whatever, and you're like, oh my God, like what a disaster I was. And that has never not been in the back of my mind. Like, people are going to make mistakes and whatever, but I think it's super important that, and I've always said this, like, it's almost easier to take a greener person, someone that doesn't exactly know or have a ton of history and a bunch of programs and stuff, because they will learn the way that your system works. And I think people probably think like, oh, I don't have enough experience to go here. But in some ways, that's actually better, because you can kind of mold them to your system and teach them the way that you do things. Whereas if someone comes in and they are an expert in everything and that's not how you do something, I think that's almost trickier. So I just try to have an open mind with those people, but still they're looking at their peers, they're looking at the rest of us, and they see a high standard. And we, without being like, yours isn't good enough, I think they can look around and see where they want to get to, like their braids and their wraps and the way that they do things. They see where they can get to. And I think it's important to kind of encourage that progression, as long as people are willing to learn. And that's, I think people that aren't there for the right reason or aren't necessarily that into it kind of sort themselves out. So I think if you find someone that's invested, you can kind of bring them along and just kind of give them some time, but also show them what the end goal is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and for me, sort of adding on to that bit, it was important. I think we sort of mentioned it a bit before, but it was important to learn how each of the new people, how they learn. So, some people are very visual, other people, Tyler was talking about the list, absolutely, like make the list if they need a list. I was very big on making sure that the barn setup and the whiteboards and all that had all the information needed. So if someone wasn't there for turnout, if I wasn't there for turnout late nights, it was written exactly where it should be, not paddocks were numbered, X horse number 1, X horse number 2, so for me, it was about making, if I needed to go with them and fill the water trough, whatever, then I'd be like, okay, this is where the hoses, this hose reaches X amount of paddocks, this is how we do it. So I was always very aware of how someone actually learns and moves through the building process, and completely agree with you. Obviously Philip's program and yours, we were very fast moving, so we had to be very aware of if we were sort of just sending people off in the deep end and not realizing what they did or didn't know. But once you have gone through that 2 to 3 weeks, and then just passing off different tasks that will hopefully step up their game. And the biggest thing for me too is when people will come in, like, I always, no question is dumb, but you need to make sure, sometimes if I was rushed for some reason and someone would ask me a question, I'd be like, oh my God. So I had to check myself as well, be like, no question is dumb. Like, I would rather you ask than something silly happen because you didn't ask. So for me, as a barn manager groom, like, I was trying to always check myself when those situations came up. And I think a little bit of, maybe it'll come a bit later, but being in the mindset, being there in the moment is so important, so that you are always remembering why you're there, and that not everybody has done it a billion times like you have. So to give them that chance.
Yeah, absolutely, Emma. I think that was a really good way to put it, and to kind of like take that breath and say, just because everything makes sense up here doesn't mean it makes sense for everyone else. And being able to slow down and show people what needs to happen. I do feel like a lot of the programs up here have dummy proofed the system. There's stall charts and buckets with names on and paddock charts. And, I'm pretty sure that if Steph, God forbid, broke her leg tomorrow and I needed to go to Windura to do the barn, I would find all the information that I needed, not even knowing the horses, to get everyone their food and put them in the right places. So there is some management that goes on to make things happen as well.
For sure. For sure. And I think too is like giving, like Emma said, throwing people in the deep end. I think there has to be a time and a place, but I do think, and this is maybe a discussion for another time, but like you do have to kind of push people into situations, like if you have super shy people or people that kind of, hesitate to do certain tasks, like I think you can kind of gently push them. They don't want to set rails because they don't want to do it wrong. Like there's really only one way to learn. And I think part of being a leader too is recognizing when people are ready to kind of step up their game a little bit and are ready to learn how to drive the truck and trailer, or just do certain things. And that's also part of it, is not trying to shelter everybody from all the tasks, because I think people get a lot of confidence from accomplishing things that they otherwise maybe just would have let somebody else do because they don't want to mess it up.
Yeah, and I think this sort of threads back into our conversation about burnout as well, because if you do have a quiet day, you can go into burnout protection mode, which is like, let's do as little as possible today. When spending the 30 minutes to work on braids with your new working student might really be quite a good use of time. I know for me, I love teaching and I love sharing knowledge. So that is something that actually helped me with burnout as well, is being able to spend quiet time teaching. I think the hardest time to teach is when we're in a get it done now situation. So if you're at like a horse show and you brought someone that doesn't necessarily know what they're doing yet, that can be really, really difficult versus, okay, it's a slow day at home. Can we just, again, work on braids, work on wraps? Like, I want you to go put a few braids in that mane, put front wraps on that horse, and I'll check them for you so that you're using your time really efficiently. And I know, again, like I think burnout mindset is, but there's never any time. There's things that you can do to balance out. I was always a big fan of the trailer can get mucked out tomorrow morning. Like we are all tired from the show. Like, let's just redo the trailer tomorrow morning. We get an extra hour of sleep tonight. We come a little bit energized tomorrow. I know that's not everyone's mindset. Some people are like, let's just get it done. So it's done because we have too much stuff on our plate. But I felt like there was always a way to sort of balance out the crazy go, go, go time from, all right, now we've got an extra set of hands, or, this kid's in town that wanted to come at the barn. Like, how can we use the most of that extra hand time? Feeding along that thought, that was a question that came up a lot. When you are legitimately short staffed, which is, I know, a huge problem across the industry right now, how do you start to prioritize what tasks need to be done, making sure the horses all get taken care of, but also not spreading yourself too thin by trying to, maybe hold a standard that's too high and unrealistic for the amount of staff that you have when you are down a member or two?
You want me to go, or you?
You said me?
Yeah, you go.
Yeah. So, for me, those days, like we typically a Sunday we would always Sunday and Mondays we would be down staff, just so everyone got days off and that. And I would, if the horse wasn't working, um, it needed to be looked over and his feet picked and make sure nothing was going on, but it didn't have to be groomed that day. Like it's been groomed 6 days a week. If it doesn't get fully groomed on the seventh day, then that that was one less task. So like a Sunday, most horses were off unless they had to be worked for some reason. So on a Sunday, all the horses' feet would come in, go out, but they'd get their feet picked. They'd all get thoroughly checked over to make sure there was no, obviously cuts, swellings, heat, the list goes on. But we didn't have to do the full grooming. And like Ty says, obviously the horses did come first, but things like if we were having a heavy riding day and it was running late, like cleaning the tack, I'd be like, okay, let's just wash the bits, make sure the bits are clean, and we will get the tack done tomorrow. So those were the types of things. And like, Tyler was making the point about the trailer cleaning and that. And I tried to put in a rule. I was like, if I was home by 5, then I would get the trailer cleaned and emptied and pull out the tap. But if it was after 5, we did not do that. We left it till the next day, unless of course we were going to a show the next day and we needed it, then that was a different matter. So yeah, for me it was, the horses get absolutely everything taken care of, except if they miss a groom for one day a week, I wouldn't stress about it. And that's sort of, for us, when we had a barn of 35 to 40 horses, that made a huge difference in our day planning, basically.
Yeah, I think similar. I mean, obviously Boyd and Phillips programs are pretty similar. So, yeah, like last night I get in from Millbrook, parked the trailer. I didn't touch it again until today. So like yeah, like tack stayed in there. It was dirty. It was 8 o'clock. I'm like, you know what? I have tomorrow. So those things, like, of course, you get the horses settled in, waited a little bit, fed them, like all of those things that matter in that moment are taken care of. But like, it's not like I was going to go start a load of laundry or, bring all the dirty tack out. Like that's a project for another day. So I think if you can, like everybody else said, like you can prioritize things that matter and things that if it gets done tomorrow, it's okay. Like it's not, no one's being shorted if something gets done tomorrow.
And I think that's a little bit, obviously every rider who, a barn manager is going to have their own list of what they think is important, right? It doesn't matter what discipline, every person's got their own thing. Like, certainly Philip did not micromanage me as a barn manager and what needed to be done in the barn. Like, so, if we didn't get the cobwebbing done one week, I wasn't going to get yelled at by Philip for it, But you walk into I know I've walked into plenty of barns and go, oh my God, how do they keep it this clean? And maybe it was probably a smaller barn. They probably had, Monday, like I know a couple of barns, like Monday, no matter what, all the horses were off. So everybody spent time like decobwebbing and dusting and sweeping. And, I can remember just walking and be like, oh my God, I want my barn to be like this, but I can't. And you really for me, I just had to be like, you know what? We're in a completely different situation. That's not what I physically can't make that happen. So I know my horses are happy, and that's what, the horses are first, the horses are happy. That's what you have to come back to and not stress about on those days that just get too busy that you can't, sweep thoroughly or clean the tack properly or, I don't know what else. I can't think of it. But hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. We had one question that specifically asked, in a sport that often prides itself on toughness, how can we create a barn culture where people feel safe speaking up about mental or physical struggles without fear of judgment or consequence? And, as we were kind of talking through that, that's one thing that I was I would tell Jenny if I didn't think I could safely drive the horses home. It was a crazy horse show weekend. Hey, is there any way we can stay the extra night? Like, we don't have anything to get back to. I really just don't feel like I can make that trip right now. And that boundary, I think, was really important. And I always did feel really comfortable speaking up. But that wasn't always the case. I think you come into this industry and you wear toughness and the go, 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 win at all costs mentality as a little bit of a chip on your shoulder. And I think it honestly can create some tension in barns if you have a rider that comes in late a few days a week because they're going to their chiropractic appointments, or they leave early to be able to do their own thing. And there's a lot of autonomy that riders have that grooms don't necessarily have. So having those conversations and saying, hey, I need to go to the doctor, I need to have this done, like, I'm not feeling so good, so that you actually can take care of yourself. It's a little bit of a systemic problem and process to work through. But Emma and Steph, I'd be curious to hear about how you kind of deal with that culture. Maybe someone's afraid to speak up for themselves and their mental health in a program, how they can start to navigate that.
For me, it was I would, as best as I can, have Monday mornings, we'd have meetings, and it would just be in the tap room. And I would hope I would convey to them that, this is, please, if we have issues, if you're not feeling that you're doing something adequately, or you're not understanding what we're expecting of you, those were the times that I would, hopefully they would come to me and ask me for their help so that I could put it into that day or put it in for the week. If just for instance, if someone was like, hey, I really need this week off, and it was 2 months away, and I'd be like, okay, let me double check the calendar, and we'll sort that out. And then I think what was important too is, like, for me as a leader, I had to be able to take people aside and say, hey, I didn't, you didn't speak up. Is there anything wrong? Please tell me. Like, I can't help you unless you ask. So, going back to your point, you have to be that person that can go to them and be like, I noticed this didn't happen. Like, someone didn't feed late, or why didn't this feed late? But I wouldn't, if it was that situation, I wouldn't address that in front of everybody else. I would always take them aside and be like, hey, I realized this didn't happen, or I noticed this. Is there a reason? Like, can you tell me? And sometimes there was a reason, and other times they were like, oops, I forgot. So for me, that's how I would deal with things, like regular meetings and checking in with everybody. And it was also finding that line of, I did want some things being done a certain way, and making sure everybody understood the importance. I'm trying to think. A good example is like horses that are on gastrodon, right? We really want them to have it before grain. It needs to be 30 minutes, at least 30 minutes on an empty stomach. And explaining to people why that is so important, as from the health of the horse, but also from, hey, this owner's paying a lot of money for this horse to get gastrodon, and you're giving it and then throwing the feed in straight away. Like, we shouldn't be doing that. Like, here's their bill, would you like to pay that? We want to get the most out of it. So sort of making sure they understood why certain things were there isn't a line, this is what you have to do. But yeah, for me, it was big. If I I don't want to say caught, but if I noticed someone was struggling or not doing things correctly, I wouldn't necessarily address it in front of everybody. I would always take them aside. So hopefully that they could come to me in the future and know that I wasn't going to, like, have it out with them in front of everybody else and embarrass them. Because I do think, I mean, I hate to say it, but I've been to enough shows and stood to enough trailers that I've been embarrassed for the person next to me, because the rider's come back and had a freak out on the groom or something, and I've just sat there going, well, don't expect that groom to last. If you spoke to me like that, I would walk off. And so being able to address that and not embarrass the person. It's one that if they do it, I can't remember the saying, but you forget once, that that, okay, don't worry, if you forget twice, then we're going to have issues. You get a third time, you're probably not I might not be as nice. But, so going back to the point of people, like you said, you made sure you had that boundary and you made sure you asked. So people do have to, be accountable for themselves as well. So if you're not strong at one thing, being able to go up and be like, hey, I know I'm weak at this. Can you help me? That you have to be accountable to be able to speak up as well. We aren't mind readers, I used to say. I wasn't a mind reader.
Fair. I think a similar situation. Like I think building I think like camaraderie, I would say, maybe that's a weird word to use, but I think an environment where people know that they can come to you and say these things. Like I have people that'll be like, hey, can I have this and this dates off? Like my family's coming in town, whatever. And I'm 100%. Like just text me the dates when I'm doing the schedule for the week. Like just remind me those kind of things. But I've never told somebody they couldn't do what they wanted to do because again, I don't expect everyone to feel the same way about this as I do or make sacrifices or whatever it is. Like I think having an open channel of communication where people feel like they can come to you and say these things. And I think too that's also part of having a team. It's different if it's just two people because then one person is carrying the burden. But if there's a team of people, which is how we do our program, if one person needs to go away for something, then it's not that big of a deal. And I know that's not possible for everybody, but having a relationship with people that you work with where they feel like they can say these things or ask for that or just say, hey, like I'm feeling, I'm a little over it right now, like whatever. And you can come to a mutual understanding, a solution, be like, okay, instead, if you're not wanting to clean stalls, like maybe you do turnout today. You know what I mean? And you can have, I don't know, an open line where people feel like they can come to you and say these things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, it's important to realize for yourself as well that what you thought was really important for yourself when you're 14 might not be what you think is important when you're 35. And I think that's something that like I love seeing Emma doing body work and like I've woven equestrians into my next chapter. And I think for me, like knowing that I had the next thing planned really helped me enjoy my career. Like I did spend from my lower levels up to retiring, I spent a decade in the thick of the horse industry, and I have zero regrets about that time. And I think, you have to decide, is this something that you want to do for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? Like, what does life look like for you in the long term? But you don't have to feel stuck wherever you are because there are so many skills that you get from being a groom that you can literally take anywhere. And I talk to a lot of people that say, oh, like I'm really struggling. Maybe you need to work with horses in not such a high intense program for a second. Like maybe you need to think about talking to the reps or the nutritionist. There's so many different avenues to be involved with horses, but I think the mindset that I hate is you see someone struggling and you see someone burnt out and they're just like, well, I could just go get a good paying job and I'll be able to pay for my horses and everything will just be fine. There is stress everywhere in the world, and stress is inevitable. So, learning how to deal with stress and learning how to organize your values so you're living the life that you want to live, I think is more important. And, hey, we had someone visiting from California. She was visiting Jenny, and she was really stressed out about her corporate job and feeling like all of this anxiety. And one of the working students was like, oh, like, that's stressful too. Right? I look at nurses and like shift workers that have really crazy sleep schedules that are switching from night to day. There are so many places in life where you're going to be stressed and you're going to be tired and there's going to be things that are not going accordingly to plan. So having some acceptance for that and embracing that part of it. I'm not saying you should be stressed to the brim every single day and feeling like you don't know what the next day looks like because you're so overwhelmed with your workload. But at the same time, if your mindset is just like, let me go do something else so that I'm not stressed, I don't think that is a great solution. So on that note, stress is something that is delicate in the horse world because we are working with animals that can feel our emotions. What are some stress management strategies specifically for making sure that you're not carrying that body language over, and disrupting the horse's environments?
Am I starting on this?
Come on, Emma. Go.
So again, knowing yourself for me, I think it comes a little bit back to what you've spoken about, Tyler, too, is remembering the why. The why are we in? Why are we in the business that we're in? Why are we in this industry? And obviously, for most people can say, well, it's the horses, and the days that were stressful or too busy, I would try and make a point of, I would actually always, not always, but I would always be the last one out at the end of the day in the barn, because actually that was to sit in the barn when it was dead quiet and listen to the horses munching. Like, to me, that was heaven, to just hear completely happy horses, very quiet, munching away. So finding, being in the moment, finding the time to remember why you're doing it, and spend 5 minutes just sitting there with them. One of the things I teach through the clinics is you have to, especially if you're very competitive, you're always asking the horse for something. You're asking it to come in from the field. You're then asking it to be okay to be washed. You're asking it to stand still for half an hour to braid. You're asking it, then the right, it has to be ridden, it has to work. And then you're asking it to, if it's okay to groom it. And I'm like, we're always asking them something, and when are we going to give something back to them? And for me, that was going into their stall and just being quiet with them. You don't go in with a halter. You don't ask anything of them. If you just stand there and they come to you and then want their neck scratched, like, that was always my goal of them. Just being able to settle my own brain and work around them well, and know that there were definite times during the day where I would not ask anything of them. I just wanted to spend time with them. But definitely in the evenings, like, if I sometimes I would come down, doing the lates, like sometimes we'd be like, oh my God, I got lates. But ultimately sometimes lates was the best thing that could happen, because it would give me that time I could do them at my pace. I didn't have to worry about, it was up to me when I went to bed, but just spending that time individually with the horses, and hearing them be quiet. And that was very, very important to me. And I think that helps through the day. And, if I did feel very rushed, sometimes I have to just go out and take literally 10 seconds and take a deep breath and remember why, and then come back into the barn and be like, okay, off we go again.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree. I think my answer would be very similar to Emma, like remembering what this is all for, and the bigger picture, and you have to appreciate the small moments, whether it's doing night check or like we do earlies, like showing up when no one else is around, you're just doing your own thing, or even taking horses, a smaller group or just one horse away on a trip. Like, there's something
Cathartic.
very
Is that the word?
Cathartic. Cathartic. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's it. Yeah.
Cathartic.
Yeah.
That's it.
Cathartic. Yeah.
Orthotic, which is not the right word.
I think there is something to be said for that. So like you're like, oh God, I have to pack and we're going traveling and it's the weight of this event and whatever. But then you can find like comfort or whatever in just having one horse and being able to just focus on them and what they want, and just hand grazing and nothing else is going on. And I think to manage your own stress, you have to find little moments, even just throughout the day, where you have those, regardless of what you're doing. And kind of as Tyler said, also life is stressful. And I don't know what you would possibly be doing if you weren't stressed out. So I think learning how to deal with stress is huge, and understanding like it's a privilege to have something that you care this much about. if you worked at a factory and you just had to move pallets from here to there, if you didn't find that super rewarding, like I think there's beauty in having something that you feel that passionate about. And obviously, we're not doing it because we're making millions and cashing huge checks every week. Like, we're doing it because we like the horses, we like the travel, we like the sport, and we want to be a part of it. And I think that in itself is a privilege. And I'm not saying when, it's pouring rain and you're freezing and nothing is going right and it's a disaster, like, yes, it is hard to see the bigger picture. But if you look around and understand, like, everybody's in it together, like the horses are at our mercy at the end of the day, and doing right by them ultimately is why you're here. So
Yeah, no, and I think that ties it up really well into that conversation of values, because when I was even 14 years old, I loved that I was at the barn on Christmas and Thanksgiving, right? Like, it was part of who I was and part of my identity. And I like wore it like such a chip on my shoulder. And even working for Jenny, I was just so proud and happy to be there. But then, if you start to feel "Ugh, I don't want to miss Christmas anymore. I don't want to do certain things." You either have to figure out if you can make it work in your situation or fail forward into the next thing. And I think that's, again, it's about being really realistic about making a life that includes horses, but it's gonna working for yourself is stressful, working for someone else is stressful, working for horses has these really, really great, beautiful things that you can do, and it has really awful, heartbreaking situations as well. And I think that the horses teach us a lot. Um, when you guys talk about that why, that motivation, we did have a question that said, what is the thing that motivates you on the hard day? How would you put your why or your passion to words? I know that's a hard
I feel like
one.
on the hard days, it's kind of just putting your head down and doing it. You know what I mean? Like, there's no nice way to say it. Like, some days are horrible and you just have to put your head down and be like, okay, tomorrow will be better. Or, like, this is a really unforeseen, unfortunate, horrible situation, but there's only one way through it, and it's to keep going. And I think that might not be like always the answer, but in a lot of situations where you just feel like this is not ideal, like, sometimes the only answer is to just get through it. And highs will always be high and lows will always be low, but you can find a middle ground. And sometimes it feels like you're on this like slope of shit, and you just, are like just struggling and you're never going to catch a break. But things always change. It always stops raining, the sun always comes out. Like, there will be a break in whatever unfortunate situation you're in. And I think some days the only answer is to just put your head down and keep going.
Yeah. I think I always liked that, like, the horses needed me, right? That was like
Yes, like,
I was like,
again, like I said earlier, they are at our mercy. So whatever the situation may be, like, you have to keep going because they have no choice, and they don't know all the things that you're emotional about. They're like emotional about food and turnout. So you know what I'm saying? Like, you got to keep going. So I don't know. That's probably not a very healthy answer, but that's my answer.
I don't I don't think there's anything unhealthy about that. I think there is like a moment of gratitude for like what, like, for me it was always thinking about me as a young kid who didn't really connect with people, and I connected with horses, and now through horses I've connected with people. And that's like, I know, a weird thing to be thinking about when you're tired and you're like, I don't know how I'm gonna get through this next day of a horse show, but like, oh my God, I can actually talk to people because of this amazing creature in front of me. And just that, like, little soft nose, right? That's a motivation for me. I just love a good, like, little nuzzle on the muzzle rub. Emma,
That's
what about you?
For me, I feel like I've probably said this 10,000 times. Like, for me, it is that bond with the horses. Like, um, even the other day I went out to the paddock and saw Mighty Nice, and I have he have he's been retired for however long, and I actually have been very bad, and I hadn't seen him for a while, but to just go out there, and I'm going to get emotional saying to go out there and give him a snuggle and a kiss, that he came walking up to me, and we had a little chat, and he's still really itchy in the spots that he was always itchy in, and he loved his ears being rubbed, and to me, that creating that is very important to me, and always was when I was grooming. So the motivation was always just, the next horse needs you. Like we had some, I mean, I can remember I was in Aiken and I lost my dog. I had to put him down when I was at an event in Aiken. And we were there with 5 horses. Like, what was I going to do? Be like, oh, sorry, Philip, can't go to the CIC that we need to qualify at tomorrow because I just had to put my dog down. Like, so what was my motivation to keep going? Well, the horses needed me, they had, like Steph said, they had to be fed. They had to, that was the day you had to keep going. So yeah, I feel like it's very repetitive, but I still say it's for me, it's always the horse that you can go in to the store and they'll sit and listen to all your woes. But and to extend that further, like obviously I've been in this business for so long, the friends that you have that we've all garnered in the family. I always say the grooms are a family, and I might be going through a bad day today. Steph will go through a bad day tomorrow, but tonight, my bad day, I can call Steph and she'll make me laugh, and she'll be realistic. If I'm like throwing myself off the bridge, she'll be like, "Wait a minute, like don't throw yourself off the bridge yet." And I think as grooms, we all have that through with us, right? We can all go to an event and be like, "Oh my God, I'm going to yell at my boss if I don't get this off my chest," like, and that is what is, I don't want, magical is a silly term, but I mean that camaraderie, that family that we have with each other is so important. And I hope that, I definitely feel working student, path working student, they've definitely come up to me and, sort of, they've said like they didn't realize at the time, but now they realize like what we were trying to build, when they were with us. And I sort of, smile at them and go, yeah, we tried, like we did have a good time. And and the other thing is, like, I've had people that were working students that are now maybe trying to be professionals, and they would ring me up and be like, "Emma, I'm so thankful you harassed me or got after me, and I understand exactly why you got after me, and I was an idiot." And those sort of small moments, you like look forward to hearing how you've encouraged someone else's life because of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. Well, I'm going to go ahead and ask our wrap-up question. So if anyone has anything that they are thinking about in these topics that they want answered, we can circle back to it if you ping it into the chat. But I think this one, might take a minute or two, because I'd love to hear what the most important advice you would give to someone starting out their career in horses.
Oh man.
I can
She's
start.
She's gonna make me go first. I
I
already
can
know.
start if you want.
Yeah, you go. Yeah, Tyler, you go.
Okay. One would be to just keep a really open mind, again, in the possibilities of what horses will bring to your life. You can do so much in this field and with this career. I think the biggest mistake that I made was like pinholing so tightly and gripping so tightly onto goals that, when my first horse that I had wasn't going well, I was like, oh no, I'm probably not going to be a good upper level rider. So let me be the best groom that I can be. And then, I'm doing the top grooming stuff. And it's weird how you look back, and had I kept cracking on at the horse thing, I think I could have been a decent rider. Obviously, that's my biggest journey, is there was a lot of things throughout my career that were affected by the way that I was thinking about them. Obviously, coming into sport and performance psychology, you can think about things in different ways and change a reality. So if you're in a circumstance and you're sitting here and you're telling me, well, the harsh reality is we don't have enough staff, we don't have enough time, and everyone's burnout and miserable, there's a lot of things that you can do without really having to change that situation at all. You can just change the way that you're communicating, change the way that you're working with your boss and your coworkers or whatever that situation looks like. Be creative because this thing up here changes how we experience life. And it's simple pivots. It's being able to take a breath and be where you are and be okay with what you don't know. I still feel like there's so much about horses that I don't know. And again, I got a degree in equine business management and animal science and spent 10 years in the industry. And the kids still teach me different things when I go to clinics and interact with people. So always having an open mind, and always failing forward into the next thing, but also don't write off where you are just because there's one little thing that isn't working for you. You can fix it, you can communicate, and you're also probably good enough to go take that job at a barn that you're scared to take. If you have that worry, it means that you're probably going to be okay. I think that's something like I wanted to work as hard as possible. And like Steph said, even if you don't know everything that you need to know, if you go in with a good work ethic and a good attitude, that's going to take you really far.
Thanks,
100%.
Charlie. You said everything.
Yeah,
Yeah, literally,
I
that's
stole the answer. So
yeah.
Still,
I would say, in addition to that, though, like a little bit what you said, like don't be afraid to admit what you don't know, and also surround yourself with people that do know. Like Emma was a huge mentor to me when I was working in my job before this, and like I didn't know anything, like but I was always interested in learning more. Like I still don't, as Tyler said, I still don't know, the majority of it, but I feel like you can put yourself in a situation where you are now is a stepping stone, and none of us are finished products, like who knows what any of us are doing in 10 years. But I think having the long term vision of, I think it's important. I guess my biggest advice would be whatever you're doing, just try to be really good at that. If you're riding, try to be good at that. If it's you've come to the realization you're probably not going to ride around a bunch of 5 stars, then whatever you do next, like that was a realization for me. And I was very interested in grooming. So I was like, I'm going to do this, but I want to do it really well. So I'm going to surround myself with people who can teach me. And if I don't know something, I'm going to seek out that information, and I'm just going to try really hard. And I'm going to use different opportunities and meet people and kind of build the life that I want. But I like you said, Tyler, like don't have such narrow vision that you have one path, and if that one path doesn't work out, then you fail at life and you have to go work in a random sphere that you never wanted just because you aren't riding around advanced at 16 years old. So I think having an open mind, but whatever you do, just try to do it really well. And I think doors open for those kind of people all the time, because if you're dedicated to something, people appreciate effort and hustle, basically. And I think you can always move forward and progress. And even if you're seeing it as a failure at the time, just keep an open mind and keep going. You just have to keep going and things will work out. I don't know.
Yeah, and just to expand on that a little bit, I think as someone coming into a situation you don't know, you're going to be learning, and like Steph and Tyler are saying, none of us will ever know everything about horses. Okay, no one knows everything about horses, so we're always learning. But be prepared to be accountable for your own actions.
Yeah.
Even if you come in with lack of knowledge, if you do something wrong, be prepared to put your hand up and be like, hey, I misunderstood. That went wrong. Because I have a lot more respect for people. You do have to earn respect, but I respect the people that come to me and go, hey, I messed up, than the people that try and push it under the rug and go, oh, it wasn't me. And I think, you know, we want you to learn. We want all of us want you to become the best person you can be, but you have to be accountable for your own actions. You know, learning about you might not come in as the most efficient person, but you know, we can't be accountable for you. You have to come in with your own accountability and be prepared to stick up. And if someone comes in and gives you a list of items, you're like, crap, I'm not going to be able to do that. You know, speak up and go, hey, I'm definitely going to get through these, but I'm not going to get through this today. Or if you wrapped a horse and you forgot to have someone check it, and it's got a bandage bow the next morning, like you need to say, hey, I messed up. That was me. Okay, we need to start practicing. And I think that on the other side too is like, we can teach you, but if you don't practice, then that's on you. That's not on anyone that's, you know, the staff. Like if I show you how to braid and I say, hey, put one braid in a day, like at the end of the workday, then you need to do that. I can't do that for you. Like if you don't want to practice, you're never gonna, you know, what is it? Practice makes perfect, right? And that's so true in a lot of the, you know, bandage wrapping, uh you know, braiding, pulling tails or manes if that's what you choose to do, clipping. You know, my first clip job was I went and clipped like 10 school ponies, and let me tell you, they were really hideous. But that was the only way I was going to improve, by doing ponies that it didn't matter too much what they looked like. So you really be accountable, make sure you practice if you're given something new. And you know, it is an amazing industry if you do come in with that open mindset and are prepared to work.
Someone clipped at college, because that was part of our like horse college job. Someone clipped one of our done IHSA horses with like surgical blades. So that was like a really fun experiment. But again, like you have to go to an environment when you can learn. And the piggyback I want to put on that is you don't have to hate yourself to be able to get better at something. Like I think that's a really easy way to pop some of the burnout and pop some of the stress and pop some of the anxiety. If you're legitimately learning, you have to give yourself some self-compassion to make those mistakes and not go, oh my God, I can't believe I did. Of course you made a mistake and this horse has clipper lines all over it. Of course your braids look like shit the first time you do them. You don't laugh at a baby when it's learning how to walk and it falls down. So finding an
Baby.
environment and finding a place that you can go, well, you might laugh at them, but you're not like, oh, you stupid baby, I can't believe you didn't learn how to walk on the first try. Like you will make mistakes and you will continue to make mistakes. And unfortunately, the list of mistakes that you can make in this industry is so long. And I look back to, again, especially my time with Jenny, because that was like the end of my career. I think a lot of burnout came from the mistakes I was making because I had this thing in my mind that I shouldn't be making mistakes. But they were new mistakes. They weren't like I was doing different, like the same one every time. It was a new, oh, I didn't even know that could happen. How did that go wrong type of mistake. And those are very, very plentiful in this industry. So people hate that word self-compassion. When I'm doing sessions with clients one-on-one, I'm like, ooh, this icky, sticky word of self-compassion. But if you actually look at the literature and the research, self-compassion is linked to mental toughness. It is linked to success. So being able to find the space to be compassionate to yourself, and just enjoy the journey. Like I think there was a question in there that said, would you recommend other kids to follow the path that you did? Absolutely. Just don't pinhole yourself into this is all or nothing. Because you can go and you can have a really great decade, 2 decades, 3 decades, 4 decades with horses, and you can continue to do something else, something else, something else. And you can still involve horses in whatever you choose to do. So I think I'm rambling now. Emma, is there anything else you want to say to help us wrap up?
I just think on the back, piggybacking on the back of you, whatever the saying is, and don't, number one, I think you have to have a sense of humor. There are times you're going to make a mistake. I mean, there are times you'll make mistakes and they're not funny, but the times you make a mistake and they're funny, like you have to be able to laugh at yourself. But then I just lost the train of thought.
To laugh at yourself. That's fine.
Yeah, no, there was something on the back of that. I got where's Steph because I can't remember.
No, I mean, I think we've pretty much said everything, like I think it's important. I would recommend someone to come into this. I don't think it's as glamorous maybe as some, the general public thinks. And oh my God, you get to travel and do yes, that is a part of it, but that's also like 3% of what we do. And I think I have met some incredible people, some of my best friends, like, you're talking about Christmas and that, but I feel like I've never sat here alone on Christmas. Like, I think you build a community around yourself where everybody's kind of doing the same thing, like all the working students or grooms or whoever in your community, whatever that looks like, is kind of doing the same thing. And I think that's a huge thing, is pushing yourself not to isolate. If you are feeling, sorry for yourself or whatever, like I think you have to build a community that you want to be a part of. And I think it's incredible the places you can go and the people that you can meet, and the places you can go with horses specifically, I think is incredible. There's a lot of different countries and things I would have not gone to otherwise, but I think and so yeah, I would 100% recommend it to someone, but I think you have to understand there's like this much glamour and then the rest of it is just hard work. But if you can have an appreciation for the beauty of the hard work too, then I think you can probably make it whatever way you want to do horses or within the industry. Like I think there's a place for you there.
Yeah, I just remembered what I was thinking about.
Oh yeah, get back to it.
So, two things I want to say is like I think it's important to remember like you can always come back to horses. Like maybe you've done it for a gap year and stuff, and maybe it isn't for you, but horses will always be there. So, if you've given it a good shot and you're like, you know what, this isn't for me, there is no shame in walking away. And then maybe 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, there will always be somewhere that you can go and pet a horse, ride a horse, groom a horse. So I think that is super important to remember as well. And it's not for everyone. It's absolutely not for everyone. But at the same time, if you go into this career, you can get a job anywhere around the world with horses. If you want to go to Australia, go to Australia. Like the one, how I came over here was because I, one, wanted to go to an English speaking country. Two, I couldn't actually afford to like just travel. But horses brought me over here because the one thing I could do is I could tack up a horse and I could groom a horse and I could ride a little bit. And you can pretty much go to any country around the world and you're able to do that. So, don't give up on yourself. Don't forget why you do it. And I think enjoy the journey is probably one of the main things with our industry.
Yeah. My dad always used to say whenever we watched a movie with a horse in it, Tyler, who's taking care of those horses and who's teaching those actors how to ride? Like, just get creative and have some fun with the horses. And I think we will leave it there. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Emma, do we have a plan for the next one yet, or should we just have a email out to?
Uh-huh. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you so much to Tyler for giving her time to this today. You're amazing, and you're going to see her the next few times we do this. And then Stephanie, I know you've had a long day and a long weekend, but thank you very much for putting over your time.
Oh, no, that's great.
And thank you everybody that's joined us tonight. We would love to hear from you. As Tyler said, the questions we're working on splitting them up into different series. No, I do not have dates yet, but we will get that out to on social media as soon as we figure out when we can all do this again. And I just really hope everybody's enjoyed tonight and learned a little bit of something for yourselves, but also a little bit about us as well. And go and enjoy your horses.
All right. Thank you guys. I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting.
Thank you.